I've been helping a lot of people improve their accounts on stream, and I keep seeing the same mistakes over and over. Hey everyone, Shark here, and in this video we're going to talk about the top 5 most common mistakes Genshin Impact players make. These are very common mistakes that beginners, mid-level players, and even veteran players make all the time. I'll go over what these mistakes are, tell you how to avoid them, and give you a way to fix those mistakes if you found that you've made those mistakes yourself. The first really common mistake is not leveling artifacts, talents, and weapons. This is pretty common for newer players who don't realize the significance of leveling your artifacts, talents, and weapons. In most games, you want to prioritize leveling a character's level before anything else, but Genshin is a bit different. So when I see someone with a level 40 or 50 character, but only a level 20 weapon, I know something's up. So make sure to prioritize leveling your weapon, talent, and artifacts, because those will be way more significant increases to a character's damage than just leveling up their character level, with a few niche exceptions. These exceptions are for characters that proc transformative reactions, but if you don't know what that is and you haven't leveled your artifacts, talents, or weapons, just level those first. And just a quick note about artifacts, it's not advised that you farm artifacts until AR 45+, but you should be leveling the best quality artifacts you have with the white and green artifact fodder that you find around the world. And just make sure to use any good artifact that gives you a useful main stat, like attack percent, elemental damage, or crit. And even if the artifact substats are bad, you can take the artifact that you leveled, put it into a better artifact you may get later, and when you roll a previously leveled artifact into another artifact, the new artifact gains 80% of the experience that you invested into the old artifact, so you still maintain a majority of the artifact experience you invested into an old artifact if you roll it into a new one. The second really common mistake players make is wishing for too many on-field DPS characters. These are typically called main DPS characters. I like to call them on-field DPS characters because they're the characters that basically do very little or nothing if they're not on the field. These are characters like Ito, Xiao, Yoimiya, Sino, as well as several 4-stars like Yanfei and Razor. The reality is you really only need about 1 to 2 on-field DPS characters for your entire account. However, most of the 5-stars that Hoyoverse releases tend to be these on-field DPS characters. The reason you don't want too many of these characters is because you typically want 1 on-field DPS with 3 other supporting characters. And if you try to use multiple on-field DPS characters in the same team, some things can get pretty messy. Because if you truly want to make a character shine, you have to take advantage of Genshin's power system, and you have to do that by building a cohesive team. And a cohesive team is like a good musical group or a band. If all you have are lead guitars, then you're not going to have the same rich, full sound that you could get by replacing 3 of those lead guitars with drums, bass, and keys. In other words, your on-field DPS characters are a lot like divas. They all want the spotlight, but if you put a bunch of them together, there's just going to be complete chaos. This is also why supporting characters like Kazuha or Nahida are so highly rated and really valuable to your account, because they make just about every team combination better. So remember, the on-field DPS characters in Genshin are major divas. You don't want to wish for too many because they don't do well with each other, but if you get 3 good supports for them, then they do wonderfully. So make sure to not wish for too many on-field DPS characters unless you have the supporting characters to back them up. Another really big mistake is not subbing to Shark to get really valuable Genshin information like guides, banner reviews, and codes for free Primogems. But that's easily rectified by hitting the notification bell. On to the third mistake a lot of Genshin players make, and this is building too many characters at once. In the early parts of the game, you can kind of level everyone up and it's not really a big deal, but when you get towards the middle of the game, you very quickly run out of resources. Your talent books, your experience books, your ore, your mora, it's all going to be depleted very fast if you try to build multiple characters at once. This is why you really only want to build your best characters. Typically, that's one really strong on-field DPS that can carry you through the game, and then several supports that are about 10 or so levels behind them. This can be a little bit different if you've got a quick swap team where everyone's doing damage and you're switching off very quickly, like every couple seconds. But typically you want to take the character that's staying on field the most time for you and dealing the most damage, and you want to max them first. This means you prioritize building that character's weapon, talents, artifacts, and character level before you focus on building other characters. And if you were building other characters, you wouldn't take them to the max level, you just take them a little bit below, that way you're not running too dry on resources. For example, let's say that Razor was your main on-field DPS, and that you had supporting characters which included Fischl, Kaya, and Layla. If your level cap was 60, you would get Razor to level 59 and make sure his weapon, talents, and artifacts were the max level that you could get. And then you'd level Kaya, Fischl, and Layla to level 50, get their talents up, increase their weapon level, and make sure their necessary artifacts were the appropriate levels even if all of them weren't the max level. Now let's say you're building a quick swap reverse melt team, like the one I put out in a guide for the strongest 4-star only teams. So you're using Kaya, Rosaria, Xiangling, and Bennett. If your character level is capped at 60, you can get all 4 of these characters to level 50 plus, and then equally level their talents, weapons, and artifacts. Since they're all contributing damage and you're switching very quickly between them, it makes sense to spread your resources a little bit more because there's no one really staying on the field for a long time. So if you've found that you've built too many characters and you've run out of resources, just slow down, find one good cohesive team that you like, and just focus on building them. And speaking of slowing down, that's where mistake number 4 comes in. This mistake is when players ascend their world level before they're ready. You can level your adventure rank so much faster now compared to when I started. And that's obviously good because it greatly cuts down on the amount of grinding players have to do, but it can also be really bad if you haven't built your characters to take on the more challenging content of the new world level. And I see this happen to a lot of mid-level players right around adventure rank 35 or so. It's not uncommon for people to play the game for a few weeks only to realize it got much harder, and now it's not fun because the monsters are too strong in the overworld and the domains and bosses are even worse. Here's the strategy I would take if I wanted to avoid this mistake. I would level up as normal, explore, collect the oculi and treasure chests, do world quests, all at a fairly brisk pace but far from speedrunning. The goal is to get to Inazuma, complete the Archon quest Rito escape plan, and be adventure rank 30 plus as soon as possible. Doing this would basically allow access to any future events for a lot of Primogems, free characters, and free weapons. And obviously we don't want to miss any of the free characters or weapons we get from the events, but we have to balance being fast enough to get there and being strong enough to build those characters and weapons in the first place. That's why I would build my characters enough to get me to the point where I could complete the Archon quest Rito escape plan, but then I would stop and not do any world level ascension quests, slow way down, and make sure that I built all my characters so that they were really strong and ready to handle the upcoming challenges. The reason I'm choosing to stop here is not because of difficulty, it's because being over adventure rank 30 and completing the Archon quest Rito escape plan is the highest threshold I've ever seen for a modern event. And I know there's going to be someone who's going to say, oh no, I have to be AR42 and complete all these story quests. No, you actually don't. A lot of events now have the quick start function, which lets you start these events for free Primogems, characters, and weapons early, even if you aren't at the suggested adventure rank level and haven't completed the suggested story quests. So by getting to Inazuma, completing the Archon quest Rito escape plan, and being at least adventure rank 30, you'll be able to do any event or at least quick start any event. And just a quick note, you lose absolutely nothing by quick starting events. The game makes you think you're missing something important and that there'll be some sort of consequence by using the quick start function, but there's literally none. You lose absolutely nothing at all, and there is absolutely no downside to using it. There's only the upside of being able to do the event right away, get your free primos and free 4 stars instead of grinding for 10 adventure ranks and doing a bunch of story quests before you can start the limited time events anyways. And this is exactly why completing the Archon quest Rito escape plan is a perfect place to stop and slow down. You can do all of the events, get all of the free Primogems, get all of the free characters and weapons, and the content will start to get much harder if you don't have your characters properly built. And the great thing about taking it slow to build up your characters is that you don't actually ever lose adventure rank experience. It just gets banked for you and saved for later. So you could hit adventure rank 35, not do the world quest, but keep building all your characters and you'll see all of your adventure rank experience will be banked for later. So you could do your adventure rank 35 ascension quest, and then as soon as you complete it, you immediately get all of the adventure rank experience that you've been saving for this whole time. Meaning once you decide to advance, you can jump multiple levels because you've had all that experience saved for so long. And if you've leveled your world level too fast and the enemies are too hard, there's a couple things you can do. The first of which is to go to the Adventurers Guild and lower your world level by 1. This will lower it for 24 hours. But if you really blitz through and still feel like that's not enough and you're too weak, you can always go in co-op and ask for help there. And if you need some co-op help, you can always join our Discord and ask for help there. Just make sure to tell people what region you're in and let them know that you think you leveled a little bit too quickly and some of the monsters and domains are a little tough, so you need some extra help getting those talent materials, weapon ascension materials, or something like that. If you do that, I'm sure there'll be someone who's willing to help. Now, the final mistake is one I see happen all the time, and at lower levels it kind of makes sense, but I see veteran players do this all the time. And that is not building enough energy recharge on your characters. It's so common for me to see AR 55 plus players that have these really stacked out characters, except they've only got like 110 or 120% energy recharge. Seriously, anytime I see a Kazuo with less than 150 energy recharge, which is almost all of them, it hurts my soul. Energy recharge is one of the most important stats in the game, and it can be more valuable than crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, EM, all of that, because a character's elemental burst is generally the most powerful thing in their entire kit, and you generally want to be using it when it's off cooldown. But if you can't, it just kinda sucks, but more than that, it delays your rotations and then your whole team feels like it's falling apart. You then have to make a decision on whether you want to use one burst now that's already ready, or if you want to use a couple bursts now and wait for this other one, because if you do that, it's going to delay the rotations even further, and then you're going to be even more of a mess than you already are. A lot of players start to feel this when they get to the upper floors of the Abyss, and while they have no problem maintaining their energy in the overworld or in domains, when they get to floors 11 and 12, things start to become really difficult and they're suddenly not able to get their bursts up in time. This is because the overworld and domain enemies have much less health, and once you reduce an enemy's health past a certain point, they give you a flat energy particle. These energy particles massively influence how easy it is to use your character's elemental burst off cooldown. But in the Abyss, the enemies have such high health that it takes so much longer to get their particles, so you can't rely on the enemies as a good source of energy like you can in the overworld and in domains. Especially if you're fighting something like Rift Hounds or Spectres, which give you very low energy anyways. And that's why it's really important to build the proper amount of energy recharge on a character. The only problem is you can't know exactly how much energy recharge a character needs just by looking at them. But I will give you a good rule of thumb to help. This is by no means absolute, but it does work for a lot of characters. And it's pretty simple. If the character is an on-field DPS, take the cost of their burst and divide it by 2, and that's how much extra energy recharge you need. For example, Alhaitham has a 70 cost burst, so 70 divided by 2 is 35, meaning he wants an extra 35% energy recharge, or about 135% in total. Now, if a character works exclusively off-field, you want to take the energy cost of their elemental burst, add about 10 to 20 to that, and that's how much extra energy recharge percent they need. For example, Bennett has a 60 cost elemental burst, you're pretty much using him off-field all the time, so you want to have about 160 to 180% energy recharge on him. Again, this is by no means a flawless system, but it will show you that you're probably building too little energy recharge on most of your characters. Now, you may have realized that a lot of these mistakes revolve around how you build your characters and how you spend your resources. And if you want a more in-depth step-by-step guide on how to build your account with the most maximum efficiency and the greatest increase in damage for the least amount of resin spent, I'll be sure to link that video at the end of this one. I love you all, stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.